Welcome. Today we're going to talk about visual analytics, how you can take big data and create a big asset. I'm Stephen McDaniel with Tableau Software, and in part one, we're going to talk about my personal history with big data. What is big data? I'm asked this question frequently by people who hear it, read it, hear that they should have it. I thought it would be fun to look at the history of big data, maybe for some of you, and how things have changed radically in the last few decades. If you remember the Commodore 64, the computer there in the upper left, and then the IBM PS2, I'd like to talk about my experiences with those as a starting point. Commodore 64 was a revolutionary computer. I remember writing code to deal with 1 million records. And the PS2, of course, was also revolutionary for business users, and I remember working with some Fortran code with several million records. Now, my attorneys have told me to give you a few disclosures there at the bottom. Remember, big data is fun. Now, from my own recollection, the speed at which some of these things ran is pretty incredible. At least back then I thought they were incredible. My million records in the Commodore 64, which was just a standard home computer anyone could go buy, took many hours to run. And then the PS2 was much faster. A few million records I could deal with in less than an hour, so this was like this huge improvement. Now, what I'm going to talk to as I go through a few more examples is how much did these systems cost, and what was the performance versus cost index? That's the last column here over on the far right. So performance versus cost is, of course, very important because not everyone can spend fortunes to analyze their data. And you can see there was a big leap from the Commodore to the IBM. Well, in the 90s, I had the luxury of working with some other systems. I was fortunate to work with the DEC Stations. That's the system there on the left. These were like workstations. People were quite excited about these. I worked with these at Glaxo and some other pharmaceutical companies. And I used SAS on those systems. Also, I was fortunate to work with Oracle systems on the VMWare server, that big cabinet there in the middle of the screen that could do pretty incredible things in its day. And as you can see, these were very differently priced. The DEC station was quite expensive, $30,000, and the VMWare server was almost $1 million. What's interesting is the performance versus cost index, again, according to my recollection, was fairly similar for those two, but still, about 5 or 10 times greater than the last decade. So a huge improvement of about 10x. And so I just have fond memories, especially of the DEC and VMWare systems. And then we get into the 2000s and, the age of the PC, the high-end PC, as well as I've had the fortune to work on some very high-end systems, such as the Sun Solaris Server there on the bottom. That's a quite expensive system. So in 2003, I have the PC, again, working with SAS. And you can see a huge leap in productivity, again, a 10x leap. Performance versus cost with the SAS system as well as with the Solaris system versus the prior decade. So I was actually able to analyze tens of millions or hundreds of millions of records extremely fast, often in a matter of minutes or even seconds. So this is like a total transformation. Back in the '83, I was dealing with 1 million records and it took the day. And here we are with the Solaris Server and Teradata, 300 million records in about 10 seconds. Now, also I wrote SAS for Dummies, so I've had a lot of experience with SAS on various systems, and so I have good fond memories of that. Well, what I want to talk to you about in part 3 of this presentation and part 2 as well is my latest experiences with big data here on my MacBook Pro. I find this absolutely incredible. I mean, each decade I was talking about a 10x improvement, right? The Commodore and the IBM to the DEC stations. This is performance against cost. Like how much was I getting for my dollar? I mean, I'm here on Tableau today. I'm going to show that in part 3, as well as in part 2, dealing with a few hundred million records in a matter of 10, 20 seconds at a time on a $4,000 system, an incredible index of 350,000, right, where I was back at 3 and 9 and 50 and 100 and 500 with these earlier systems. Just a massive improvement in how quickly I can ask questions of the data and actually find insights that can actually change your business. Now, I've also written other books with my wife, this one, Rapid Graphs with Tableau. So this is sort of my background and my history with big data. I love analyzing data. It's been most of my career, well, really since I was a kid. And hopefully this has been a fun sort of review of how much things have changed and how information that was previously attainable only to a few people is now available to pretty much anyone if they pick the right tools and learn some basic capabilities of those tools.